The winter night was cold, the kind of cold that bit through layers and made the city streets silent. Snow covered the ground like a white blanket, and the wind whispered between the dark buildings. Thomas, a young human engineer, walked alone toward his small apartment after another long shift at the spaceport. He kept his hands deep inside his coat pockets, his breath forming small clouds in the icy air. He had worked late again, fixing docking systems for alien vessels that now visited Earth regularly. It had been 10 years since the first contact, and though peace existed, tension still lingered. Aliens came to trade, to learn, and sometimes to judge. But humans were still the wild card of the galaxy, unpredictable and stubborn. As Thomas turned the corner near an abandoned alley, he heard a faint sound. It was soft and trembling, almost like a whimper. He hesitated, then followed the noise. His boots crunched over the snow as he peered into the shadow. There, lying near a broken crate, was a small figure shivering violently. She looked young, maybe 15 or 16 by human standards, but her skin glowed faintly blue under the pale moonlight. Her silver hair was tangled, her clothes thin and torn, and her bare feet pressed into the frozen snow. Thomas froze for a second, realizing she was not human. She was one of the Alarai, a race known for their proud fleets and emotionless discipline. Her lips moved weakly, speaking a language he didn't understand, but the tone was universal. Fear and pain. Thomas slowly stepped closer, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "Hey, it's okay," he whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." She blinked up at him, eyes glowing like tiny stars. But she didn't respond, only shivered harder. He knelt down, his mind racing. What was an alien child doing alone in this part of town, barefoot and freezing? He looked around, no ships, no guards, nothing. She seemed completely abandoned. Thomas hesitated for a moment, then sighed. He sat down in the snow, untied his boots, and pulled them off. His socks damp and his toes already cold. He gently lifted the girl's foot. It was ice cold. He slipped one boot on, then the other. They were far too big for her, but it was something. When the leather touched her skin, she gasped, as if the warmth shocked her. She looked at him again, confused, her thin voice trembling. "Why, human?" she asked, her accent strange. "Because you're freezing," he said simply, forcing a small smile. "You need them more than I do." For a few seconds she just stared at him, as if trying to understand the meaning behind the gesture. Then tears welled in her glowing eyes. She whispered something in her language again, this time softer, almost like a prayer. Thomas reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small heat pack. He cracked it and handed it to her, placing it between her palms. She held it close to her chest, eyes wide with wonder, as if he had just handed her the sun. He wanted to ask her more, where she came from, why she was here. But before he could, a distant sound rumbled through the night, a deep vibration, like thunder rolling from the heavens. Thomas frowned and looked up, across the sky. Clouds were shifting, glowing faintly blue. The girl's eyes widened in sudden panic. She grabbed his sleeve, shaking her head. "No, they come," she whispered, her voice suddenly full of fear. "Who's coming?" he asked. But she didn't answer. She just clung to him, trembling harder. A beam of blue light cut through the clouds, striking the distant spaceport. Alarms began to echo faintly across the city. Thomas looked around in confusion. The ground seemed to hum under his feet. Before he could move, the girl pressed something into his hand. A small, glowing shard of crystal, warm and pulsing like a heartbeat. "Keep," she said, "for proof." Her voice broke. "They will remember." And then, before Thomas could ask what she meant, a bright flash lit the sky, so bright that it turned the night into day for a single heartbeat. He shielded his eyes. The sound followed. Deep, powerful, like 1,000 engines roaring together. When he looked again, the girl was gone. No footprints in the snow. No sound. Only the glowing shard in his hand, and the echo of the sky trembling above. Thomas stood there, frozen, staring at the heavens, where dozens, no, hundreds, of lights now blinked through the clouds. Ships, massive and silent, descending toward Earth. And as he stood barefoot in the snow, holding that strange crystal, he realized something he could not yet explain. His small act of kindness had just changed everything. The night sky burned with blue light as enormous shadows descended through the clouds. The air trembled, and every window in the city rattled. Thomas stood frozen, clutching the glowing shard the alien girl had given him, his bare feet numb in the snow. Across the horizon, alien warships shaped like crescent blades filled the sky, silent but terrifying. They moved in perfect formation, their hulls shining like frozen stars, the same design he had seen at the spaceport. The Alarai fleet, humanity's most unpredictable ally, and sometimes their most feared visitor. The city alarms wailed, drones lifted into the air, and defense turrets rotated to face the sky. The human military broadcast echoed across every channel. All civilians remain indoors. This is not a drill. The words repeated in a calm but trembling voice. Thomas stumbled backward, still staring upward. The shard in his palm glowed brighter with every passing second, almost reacting to the ships above. It pulsed like a living thing, and for some reason, he felt it was watching. Then, suddenly, his wristcom beeped. A holographic image flickered to life. It was his friend Mia, another engineer from the spaceport. "Thomas, where are you?" she shouted, static crackling. "The Alarai just dropped out of warp without warning. Every government network is panicking." "I'm outside near Block 7, he replied, his voice shaking. "Mia, I saw someone. An Alarai girl. She was freezing. I gave her my boots and she disappeared. She gave me this." He held up the glowing shard toward the holofeed. Mia stared, her eyes widening. "Thomas, that's an Alarai heart-core fragment," she whispered. "They only carry those inside royal vessels. How did she—" Before she could finish, the sky erupted with a low hum. Dozens of smaller ships detached from the fleet, descending toward the planet like silver raindrops. Thomas's comm went dead. He looked around, realizing the streets were empty now. Doors locked, lights off. Silence except for the distant thunder of engines above. His heart pounded as one of the smaller ships landed nearby, its thrusters melting the snow around it. The ramp lowered, blue mist swirling around the landing site. Figures emerged. Tall, armored Alarai soldiers with glowing lines across their suits. They scanned the streets with devices, moving with precision, their weapons lowered but ready. Thomas ducked behind a parked vehicle. But then the shard in his hand flared like a beacon, bright and impossible to hide. One of the soldiers turned sharply, his helmet locking onto the light. A robotic voice echoed, "Signal found. Retrieval required." Thomas panicked, but before he could run, the soldier raised a hand, not to fire, but to kneel. His head lowered slightly. The rest of the squad followed. To Thomas's utter shock, they knelt in unison, their glowing armor reflecting the blue light from the shard. One of them spoke, voice calm and deep. "Human bearer of the royal token, your gesture has been witnessed by the sovereign." Thomas blinked, confused. What gesture?" "The offering of warmth," the soldier said, his tone almost reverent. "To the heir of the Alarai dominion." Thomas's breath caught. "Heir?" he whispered. "You mean that girl?" The soldier nodded once. "The child you aided was Princess Lyra of the Alarai, lost during a covert survey mission, presumed captured. Your act of compassion saved her life." He paused, glancing skyward. "And now, the sovereign seeks to repay the debt." Before Thomas could respond, the shard in his palm lifted by itself, hovering above his hand, spinning slowly. It projected a beam of light into the air, forming the faint image of the girl, Lyra, now standing tall, her silver hair flowing, her eyes glowing with strength and something softer. Gratitude. Human Thomas. Her voice echoed through the projection, calm but filled with emotion. "You gave me warmth when I had nothing. My people owe you a life debt. No human shall be harmed while I breathe." Thomas's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. He just stared at the image, feeling the world tilt beneath his feet. The soldier lowered his head again. "By order of Princess Lyra, the fleet will remain above Earth until the tribute is fulfilled." Thomas stepped forward. "Tribute? What tribute?" But before he could get an answer, the projection vanished, the shard dimmed, and the soldiers turned toward their ship. One of them gestured for him to follow. "You must come," he said. "The sovereign wishes to speak directly." Thomas hesitated, snow still falling around him, city lights flickering as power grids strained under the chaos above. He looked down at the fading crystal, remembering the frightened girl in the snow, and something inside him whispered. This was only the beginning. As the ramp closed behind him and the ship lifted into the cold night sky, Thomas felt both fear and awe. The clouds broke apart to reveal the full armada, thousands of ships surrounding Earth like a crown of stars, their engines glowing in silent unity. And in that moment, as the human world looked up in terror, the Alarai fleet did something no one could have imagined. They lowered their weapons, their ships tilted forward, and across every human broadcast, a single message appeared in blue letters. Humanity will be honored. For mercy is power. The transport ship pierced through the clouds, leaving the world below wrapped in a swirl of storm and light. Thomas sat in silence, his heart still racing. The Alarai soldiers around him spoke in their strange melodic tongue, their glowing armor making them look more like spirits than soldiers. Through the window, Earth looked small, fragile, blue against the dark of space. Thomas had always dreamed of seeing it from orbit, but not like this. Not as a guest of an alien empire whose entire fleet now surrounded the planet. The lead soldier turned toward him. You will not be harmed, he said, his voice calm but distant. The Sovereign has commanded your presence. Thomas nodded weakly, gripping the small crystal still faintly glowing in his palm. He could feel warmth pulsing from it, a heartbeat that wasn't his. Moments later, the transport docked inside a massive hangar. The walls were lined with silver-blue metal that shimmered like liquid. Alien ships rested in silence, guided by drones and light patterns that danced across the floor as the ramp lowered. Thomas's breath caught. This was not a ship, it was a floating city. A tall Alarai officer awaited him, her armor white and adorned with glowing symbols. Unlike the soldiers, her face was visible, smooth, with faint markings that glowed softly beneath her skin. She looked at Thomas with unreadable eyes. Human Thomas, she said, her voice resonating like music through the air. I am Commander Sira. You are summoned by the Sovereign and the air. Thomas followed her through a corridor filled with transparent walls showing stars beyond. Alarai of all ranks stopped to watch him pass, their glowing eyes reflecting curiosity and something deeper. Respect. When the doors ahead opened, Thomas stepped into a vast chamber. It looked like a cathedral built from starlight. Pillars of crystal reached into the ceiling where a glowing sphere pulsed like a second sun. At the center stood two figures, one taller and regal, one smaller but familiar. The smaller one turned first. It was Lyra, the alien girl he had found in the snow, but she was no longer the frightened child. Now she wore a flowing robe lined with faint blue fire, a crown of light hovering above her head, her eyes filled with calm strength. Thomas, she said softly, stepping forward. You kept your promise. He blinked, unsure how to respond. You were the one who disappeared, he said quietly. I didn't even know who you were. Lyra smiled faintly. I was lost, she said. Our scout ship crashed in the outer city during a covert mission. My guards were killed. I wandered until my strength failed, and then... You gave me warmth, she paused. You gave me kindness. The taller figure stepped forward. The Sovereign herself, her presence almost divine. She was taller than any human, her voice deep yet kind. Human Thomas, she said, your compassion to our heir has shaken our council. Never in our history has one of another race shown mercy without seeking favor. Thomas lowered his gaze, feeling small under her words. It wasn't mercy, he said. She was freezing. Anyone would have done it. The Sovereign tilted her head. And yet none did, she said. You acted without fear, without reward. A deep silence filled the hall. The air seemed alive with unseen energy. The Sovereign raised her hand, and a holographic image formed in the air. Scenes from Earth that very night, showing Thomas giving his boots to the girl, his trembling hands, his voice saying, You need them more than I do. Broadcast to every Alarai ship, Lyra's voice echoed through the chamber. The fleet watched. They saw humanity's heart. Thomas felt a chill. You showed them? Yes, Lyra said. Because they needed to see what I saw. Warmth without condition. She paused, her eyes softening. Our empire was built on strength, not kindness. But you changed that in one night. The Sovereign extended her hand, the air shimmered, and before Thomas appeared, a medallion made of the same crystal as the shard, glowing with blue light. From this moment, she declared, Earth shall be recognized as a world of honor under Alarai protection. No fleet will raise weapon against your kind. Thomas stared at the medallion, unsure if he should take it. His hands trembled. I don't understand, he whispered. I'm no hero. Lyra smiled again. You are human, she said. That is enough. Outside the hall, alarms suddenly blared. A soldier rushed in, bowing deeply. Sovereign, we are detecting movement from the Zath Dominion fleet. They are approaching the sector boundary. The Sovereign's calm broke for the first time. Zath? She whispered, then turned to Thomas. Your act may have saved your world, but it may also have drawn the eyes of others who do not believe in mercy. The lights dimmed, the stars outside flickered, and Thomas realized that the universe had just shifted again. His small act of kindness had not only changed one life, it had changed the balance of power between empires. Lyra stepped closer, placing her hand gently on his shoulder. Stay close, human, she said softly, her eyes filled with determination. What comes next will test all of us. And beyond the great windows of the Alarai flagship, space itself seemed to tremble. As distant fleets began to move, the alarms echoed through the Alarai flagship, red and blue lights flashing against the silver walls. Thomas felt the vibration under his feet as the ship shifted position, the sound of engines humming like distant thunder. He looked toward the great observation window where stars now moved slowly across the black sky. Commander Sira's voice filled the chamber. Zath Dominion fleet entering the outer perimeter. Her tone was sharp, urgent. 52 warships, armed and charging weapons. The Sovereign turned calmly, her golden eyes glowing with power. Deploy the shield line, she commanded. No ship fires without my word. Thomas stood frozen, his heart pounding. Who are the Zath? He asked. Lyra turned to him, her face serious. The Zath Dominion is what our kind fears most, she said softly. They rule through fear and silence. They believe mercy is weakness. They have destroyed dozens of peaceful worlds. And they're coming here? Thomas whispered. Lyra nodded. Because they saw our fleet bow to humanity, she said. To them, that is an insult. The Sovereign moved toward the center of the chamber where a holographic star map appeared. The Zath fleet glowed red, moving fast toward Earth's orbit. They seek to make an example, the Sovereign said. They wish to show the galaxy that compassion brings ruin. Thomas clenched his fists. Then let's show them they're wrong, he said quietly. Lyra looked at him, surprised by the determination in his voice. You would fight? She asked. I don't know how to fight like you do, he said. But I won't hide while they come for my world. For the first time, Lyra smiled. Not the soft smile of gratitude, but one of pride. Then you are more Alarai than most of us, she said. Moments later, Thomas followed Lyra to the command deck. It was vast and alive, filled with glowing control panels, hovering drones and alien officers communicating through waves of light instead of sound through the wide viewport. The Zath fleet shimmered in the distance. Massive triangular warships with blood-red energy trails. Open all channels, the Sovereign ordered, her voice calm but firm. Let them speak. A shadow filled the air, and a dark figure appeared within the holographic sphere, its face hidden beneath armor that looked like black glass. A deep, echoing voice filled the bridge. So this is the mighty Alarai bowing to a primitive ape? Thomas flinched at the words, but Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. The Alarai bow to no one, she said. We honor courage even when it comes from a fragile world. The Zath laughed, a chilling metallic sound. You mistake foolishness for courage, he said. When this is over, there will be nothing left to honor. The hologram vanished. The air fell silent except for the hum of the ship. The Sovereign raised her hand. Shields to full, she commanded. All defensive positions ready. Thomas stared at the glowing planet below. Earth, his home, small and bright in the dark sea of space. He thought of the city streets, of the snow, of the moment he saw that barefoot girl trembling in the cold. It all seemed so simple then, so human. Now it had become something far greater. Lyra stood beside him. Thomas, she said softly, if the Zath reach your planet, they will destroy everything to prove a point. Then we stop them here, he said, his voice shaking but firm. She touched her wristband, and a crystal panel opened before him, displaying the layout of the fleet. Your people built machines with heart, she said. Your engineers repair, they create, they protect. I have studied your ships, she paused. Help me find the pattern in their formation. Humans think differently than we do. Thomas looked over the map, tracing the movement of the Zath warships. They're lining up for a precision strike, he said. They're not aiming at your ships. They're targeting the gravitational relay between Earth and your flagship. Lyra's eyes widened. If they destroy that, it will pull both fleets into the planet's atmosphere. Exactly, Thomas said. They'll make Earth burn itself. Without hesitation, Lyra turned to the bridge crew. Redirect all shields to the relay point, divert energy from secondary cannons, she ordered. Protect the humans at all cost. The Sovereign watched her daughter quietly, pride glowing in her gaze. Do as she commands, she said. Let them see what compassion defends. Outside, the stars flashed as both fleets collided in a storm of light. Beams of red and blue fire crossed the void. Explosions rippled silently through space. The Alarai ships moved like dancers, fluid and precise, shielding Earth with their massive bodies. Thomas held the edge of the console, watching in awe as Lyra's fleet fought. You're really doing this, he whispered. You're risking everything. Lyra turned, her voice soft but fierce. You gave me shoes, she said. I can give you a sky. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Earth shining below, fleets clashing above. A single human standing beside a princess who had once been alone in the snow. Then the sensors beeped loudly, the relay was hit, power flickered, and the entire flagship shook, alarms blaring again. The Sovereign steadied herself. Hold the line, she commanded. Do not let the world fall. Thomas looked out the window as lightning danced across the void. The war was only beginning, and deep inside he knew this battle would decide not just Earth's fate, but the soul of the entire galaxy. The void burned with color, streams of blue and red fire laced across the dark. The clash between the Alarai and Zath fleets had turned the silent sky into a storm of living light. Thomas stood on the bridge beside Lyra, gripping the console as the ship shuddered under another impact. Shields holding at 62%, Commander Sira shouted, her voice steady but strained. Multiple hulls breached in the outer ring. Lyra's eyes flashed. Reinforce Sector 9, keep the formation tight, she ordered, her calm voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Outside, an explosion illuminated the vastness of space. One Alarai cruiser spun away, trailing fire, its lights flickering out. The image stabbed through Thomas's chest. These weren't just machines. They were living crews, fighting for a single act of kindness. The Sovereign's voice echoed through the chamber, deep and unyielding. Prepare the solar veil. Every officer froze. Thomas looked around. What's the solar veil? He asked. Lyra hesitated. It's a defensive weapon that can burn entire fleets if necessary, she said quietly. But it drains the life force of the ships that cast it. Thomas stared. You mean they'd die to use it? She nodded, her eyes full of sorrow. If it saves Earth. Yes. He shook his head. There has to be another way. Before she could answer, the screen ahead flickered. A new signal appeared. The Zath flagship, black and monstrous, its energy core pulsing crimson. The same chilling voice filled the air again. You shelter weakness beneath your wings, the Zath commander growled, and you will burn for it. A massive beam of red energy erupted from the Zath flagship, cutting through space like a sun's scream. It tore into the Alarai line. Ships vanished in silence, consumed in light. Alarms screamed across the flagship. Thomas felt the deck tilt as the ship's gravity fluctuated. Brace! Sira shouted. As the energy wave passed by, the shields flickered and the walls glowed with heat. The bridge plunged into darkness for a heartbeat. Then emergency lights flared. Lyra caught her breath. They're using a singularity spear, she said, her voice trembling now. It can bend gravity itself. Thomas looked at the burning wreckage outside, then down at the glowing crystal still in his palm, the same one Lyra had given him that night in the snow. It pulsed brighter than ever, almost alive. What if this can stop it? He said suddenly. Lyra turned to him. That shard, he nodded. It reacts to their energy. It's like it knows what's happening. The Sovereign approached, her golden eyes narrowing as she studied it. That shard is a fragment of the heart core, the royal power that binds our fleet. If it resonates with you, human, then perhaps fate has chosen you as its vessel. Thomas swallowed hard. You're saying I can use it? Lyra stepped closer. If you do, it could kill you. He looked out at Earth below, blue and beautiful, the world of oceans, mountains, laughter, all the things worth saving. If I don't, it kills everyone, he said quietly. The Sovereign raised her hand. Light surrounded Thomas. The shard floated from his palm, expanding, glowing until it was a sphere of blinding silver fire. Symbols appeared across the bridge walls, ancient Alarai runes humming with power. Lyra gripped his arm. You don't have to do this alone, she said. Thomas smiled faintly. I never was alone. The light burst outward, filling the ship. Energy streamed through the fleet, connecting every Alarai vessel in a web of radiant lines. The solar veil formed. But this time it wasn't consuming the ships. It was feeding from the shard. From Thomas's own will. The Zath commander's voice roared through the channel. Impossible! Lyra raised her voice loud and fierce. Not impossible, human. The solar veil ignited. A wave of white-blue energy spread across the void, swallowing the red beams, shattering the Zath formation. Ships exploded in silence, dissolving into dust and light. Thomas felt the force burning through him, every nerve alive, every heartbeat echoing with stars. Thomas! Lyra called out, her voice distant now, her hand reaching for him through the blinding light. Stay with me! He turned his head, barely able to see her through the glow. You still owe me my boots, he whispered with a weak smile. Then everything went white. When the light faded, the battle was over. The Zath fleet was gone. Only debris floated quietly in the emptiness. The Alarai ships stood in formation around Earth like guardians made of light. Thomas lay unconscious at the center of the bridge, the crystal dim but still warm in his hand. Lyra knelt beside him, tears glimmering on her glowing cheeks. He saved us, she whispered. He saved everyone. The Sovereign placed a hand over her heart, bowing her head. Then humanity has proven what we never understood. True power is mercy. Outside, the stars burned brighter than ever before, and beneath them, the blue planet turned quietly, alive and safe. Silence filled the stars. The war was over. The wreckage of the Zath fleet drifted like ashes in a cold sea. Earth glowed below, untouched, peaceful, beautiful. The Alarai flagship floated in quiet orbit, its lights dimmed to a soft blue hue, mourning and gratitude mixed within its walls. Thomas opened his eyes slowly, the light above him warm and golden. For a moment he didn't remember where he was. Then he heard the faint hum of alien machinery, the soft rhythm of voices, and the gentle touch of someone beside him. You're awake, Lyra's voice whispered, soft and full of relief. She sat near his bed, her silver hair shimmering under the ship's light, her hands folded together as if in prayer. Thomas tried to sit up. Pain surged through his chest. She pressed her palm gently on his shoulder. Don't move yet, she said. Your body was burned by the energy pulse, but the healers say you'll live. He looked around. The room was made of glass and light. Symbols floated gently in the air. Strange flowers glowed on the walls, releasing a soft scent. He turned to her. Did we win? He asked. Lyra smiled faintly. More than that, she said. We survived. She paused. Because of you. He looked down at his hand. The shard, or what was left of it, lay beside him, now dark and cracked, yet still faintly pulsing. I didn't do it alone, he said quietly. You and your people stood with us. Lyra shook her head, her glowing eyes full of emotion. No, Thomas. It was your heart that gave the fleet its strength. You turned our power into light, we only followed. He laughed weakly. I didn't plan to light up half the galaxy. She smiled softly. And yet you did. The door opened. The Sovereign entered, her tall frame glowing with golden lines that pulsed softly as she moved. Every soldier and attendant in the room bowed deeply. Thomas tried to follow, but the Sovereign raised her hand. Rest, human, she said, her voice kind. You have already bowed enough to destiny. She approached, holding something in her hand. A medallion carved from starlight, glowing with the insignia of the Alarai Empire. By decree of the Sovereign Council, you are named Starbearer, Protector of Mercy, Defender of Two Worlds, she said. Your story will be carried to every system, every ship, every world that once feared humanity. Thomas blinked, unsure how to respond. I'm just a man who gave away his boots, he murmured. The Sovereign's golden eyes softened. And yet you moved the stars, she said. That is how legends begin. Lyra stood beside him, her voice trembling slightly. Our people will tell your story for generations, she said. The human who gave warmth to the cold and lit the sky with his heart. Outside, through the wide window, Earth rotated slowly, and beyond it, hundreds of Alarai ships hovered silently, their lights blinking in unison, forming a pattern that stretched across the heavens, the symbol of the Starbearer. Across human communication networks, the same message began to appear, written in both languages. Humanity will be remembered. Days passed. Thomas recovered slowly. Walking again through the vast corridors of the flagship, Alarai soldiers nodded respectfully when he passed, their glowing eyes following him with admiration. Some even placed their hands over their hearts, a gesture of deep honor. Lyra often walked with him, showing him the chambers of the ship, the gardens of floating light, the silent halls of memory where the names of the fallen shimmered like stars. We remember those who fought, she said, but we honor most the one who showed us why. One evening, as the ship orbited above the glowing curve of Earth, Thomas and Lyra stood side by the great viewing deck, the stars reflected in her eyes like fire. What happens now? He asked quietly. She looked at him for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. Now we rebuild, she said. The galaxy saw what humanity did when faced with fear. Some will respect it, others will fear it, but none will forget it. Thomas smiled. Guess that's what we humans do best, he said. We survive. Lyra turned to him, her voice soft. You didn't just survive, Thomas, she said. You changed the meaning of strength. The stars glowed brighter, forming ripples across the black sky far below. The lights of human cities shimmered like scattered diamonds, unaware that their world had just been rewritten in the histories of 1,000 civilizations. And somewhere in the quiet heart of the flagship, the cracked shard on Thomas's bedside began to glow again, faint but steady, as if waiting for something yet to come. Months passed in peace. The stars no longer burned with war but shimmered with promise. Earth had changed. The skies above now glowed at night with faint silver trails. The Alarai guardians keeping silent watch. Humanity, once seen as unpredictable and wild, was now spoken of across the galaxy as the race that gave mercy instead of fear. Thomas walked again beneath Earth's skies, the cold wind biting gently at his face. He wore new boots now, a gift from Lyra, made of Alarai silk steel that shimmered faintly with blue light. He smiled whenever he looked at them, remembering the night he had given his old pair away. The world welcomed him as a hero, but he never called himself one. Governments tried to interview him. Armies offered medals, but Thomas always said the same words. It wasn't about power, it was about kindness. And people listened. One evening, as the sun sank over the ocean, the clouds lit up in colors of fire and gold. Thomas stood on a cliff overlooking the sea. A faint hum filled the air, and a beam of light descended behind him. When he turned, he saw her, Lyra, stepping out from the shimmer, her silver hair glowing against the wind. You look stronger, she said with a small smile. He laughed softly. And you look the same, still glowing. She approached, her eyes scanning the horizon. The galaxy has changed, she said quietly. The Zath Dominion has fallen silent. Worlds that once hid from the Alarai now ask for peace. And new alliances are being formed. Thomas nodded. Maybe the stars are finally tired of fighting. Lyra turned to him, her expression softer now. They're not tired, she said. They're learning. She paused. And so are we. A gentle breeze passed between them, carrying the scent of salt and rain. Thomas looked out over the endless water. Do you ever miss it? He asked. The war, the command, the power. Lyra smiled faintly. No, she said. I miss the snow, the night you found me, the warmth you shared without knowing who I was. He glanced at her, surprised. You still remember that? How could I forget? She said. You changed my world. They stood together in silence, watching the waves crash below. Above them, stars began to appear, one by one, forming a glowing pattern that stretched across the sky. Lyra looked up and smiled. "They still keep the mark," she said. "The symbol of the star-bearer." Thomas looked up too. The stars arranged in a gentle arc, glowing faintly like wings around Earth. "Looks beautiful," he murmured. Lyra turned to him, her eyes bright. "The Sovereign wants to make Earth part of the Galactic Accord," she said. "But she asked me to give you the choice." He looked at her confused. "Me? Why me?" "Because it started with you," she said softly. "One small act that changed everything. If you say yes, Earth will stand among the stars as an equal world. If you say no, we will still protect you. But from a distance." Thomas stared at the sea, his reflection shining in her glowing eyes. "All my life I thought the universe was cold," he said. "But now I know it just needed someone to remind it how to feel." He turned back to her and smiled. "Tell your mother yes." Lyra's eyes glistened. "Then it is done," she said, touching her hand to her heart. A beam of light rose from the ocean, stretching into the heavens, and the stars above shifted, forming a new constellation. A single bright line joining two symbols, one human, one Alarai, bound forever. As the light faded, Lyra stepped closer. "Will you ever come to the stars again?" she asked. Thomas chuckled softly. "Maybe someday," he said. "But for now, I think Earth needs me." She smiled. "Then we will watch," she said. From above, the air shimmered again, her form fading back into the light. But before she vanished completely, she whispered, "Goodbye, Thomas of Earth, the man who gave warmth to the cold." He stood alone on the cliff as the wind blew stronger, his hair moving with the sea breeze. He looked up once more at the night sky, where the stars still burned in the shape of a human's outstretched hand, shining brighter than ever. And somewhere beyond the edge of sight, deep in the endless dark, the galaxy whispered a new name for Earth. The world of the Light Giver.